going, Damien?
Not so bad, yourself.
Good.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity here to have a chat.
Well, listen, this is the kick off to your campaign. I'm just for everyone to know that I'm Michael Murray. I'm from Trim and Boardsmill originally, and lived in Trim as well. And but I'm in Dublin, but we're still very much involved in the Boardsmill community. Mm-hmm. So, Damien, you're running for the election. It's you haven't been involved in politics, so tell me, why are you doing it? What's motivation?
What I see happening in the last, particularly 10 years, is a disaster in the Dáil and all the politics and the way the country is being run. One disaster after another. Now, there's no point in me getting into the nitty-gritty of it, like the Children's Hospital, the bike shed and all this sort of stuff. We know all about that, and I can talk about that in more detail later on. But overall, forcing different things on the people, such as the hate speech bill, bringing in unvetted migrants, and having an inward migration policy that is a complete disaster, are just some of the things that I see that where the politicians in this country is completely failing the people.
Okay, fair enough. And say, okay, so if you're going to go forward, tell me what would be some of the things that you see needs to be done? What sort of policies?
So the first thing I would do if I was elected is I would get Article 48. Give the power to the people. Okay, first of all, give the power back to the people, which they don't have at the moment. How I would do that is I would reenact Article 48 back into the Constitution. What that does is it allows the people to get 100,000 signatures, and from that point they can call a referendum. So if there's something trying to be pushed through the Dáil that's against the wishes of the people, this can be done very easily to the people, and that brings the power directly back to the people. Now, Mick, in one swipe, that would stop the migration, it would stop these transgender bills, it would stop all of this unnecessary stuff that's going through the Dáil in one swipe, because there's no TD in the Dáil that would dare to bring that sort of stuff through if they knew that this was in the background. Article 48 in the background, and that protects the people's power and gives the people the power as well.
So what would you do to kind of get that going? Because that's a big thing, because a lot of the politicians wouldn't want to lose power.
No.
So how would you go?
That's a good question, because one of the things I'm all for, or I'm an action person, not waffle. And that's another reason why I'm getting into it, because all of these politicians are all about waffle and doing nothing and just talking about stuff over and over again. I'm actually acting on this already, because even before I get elected, if I get elected, and hopefully I do, but I'm bringing action to this already. So my plan to get this enacted into the government is, I have a petition started on my website, and I want people to come onto my website and sign that. Then what I want to do, if I'm elected, is to put this idea across to all the other independents and like-minded people or elected politicians across the country, get them to do a similar thing. Collectively then we can create signatures to get this brought forward as a motion into the Dáil, and then hopefully if we have enough numbers we can get the vote across. And in that one move we can hand the power directly back to the people of Ireland.
In summary, 100,000 votes. And Article 48, my understanding, was back in 1922.
22, yeah.
And then they took it out because politicians didn't want that kind of power with the people.
Exactly.
Yeah. I tell you, an awful lot of, like you could see a lot of policies that was gone through there. Most people don't want them, and they still go through. Now this, and I think it'd be a fantastic thing, and I think it would really put the politicians, it would make them perform.
It would make them perform. If they didn't, they'd have to exit their positions. You know,
they would overturn so a lot of these basically policies have gone through. See, this is the thing. 5 years, you've elected these politicians, and then they're pushing through basically legislation that may not be for the people. So that direct democracy, I agree with.
Well, there's other stuff coming through at the moment. Some people mightn't be aware of. There's SHPE policy coming through and being pushed on the children across the country. Now, this hasn't been properly examined by the parental boards or the unions. They've seemed to have stepped away from all of this, and it's talking about some sexual stuff that I'm not going to talk about here. But it's completely inappropriate for children. It's been taught to children now, or being proposed to be taught to children from as young as 4 to 6 and then 12-year-olds. Again, that needs to be looked at, examined by the parents of the country, and proper consultation to make sure that this stuff is okay, and that the parents are the number one educator for their children in this country. And what it seems to be is the government is kind of slowly eroding that power from the parents. And part of these things I'm talking about is to restore that and give the parents the confidence that the people they elect have their best interests at heart.
So you are back to basically the 5 years, and you have another policy, and this is, and we discussed this before, is the whip system. I think, can you explain that your other policy about that?
Okay, in brief, a lot of people aren't aware of the whip system and what that does. So the sitting government here have a whip system, which is Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Green Party and Sinn Féin. So basically, to simplify it, say I'm a constituent and you're my TD, I have an issue with an iPass centre that's being proposed to be opened next door, where they're going to bring in some unvetted immigrants into it. I would say to you, as my TD, say my Fianna Fáil TD or my Fine Gael TD, the residents group here don't want this here. We don't want this, and we don't want the hassle of having to protest here for weeks and months and day and night. We want you to look after it because that's your job. Do you know what I mean? Now, you as a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael TD would most likely agree with me because it's just common sense. But when you go back to the party, that's against the party politics. So that's where the whip comes into play. And the whip says to you, I understand your concern, but that's against the policy of this party, so therefore we can't do anything about that. And you may give out or do whatever you want, protest. If you protest too much, you'll be ejected from the party or just told to shut up and go away.
The main one you talk about is that when it comes to the vote, they can say they want them to come in with the policies, but the whip system, I think, is the big, because if you look at what went through with the, we had an opt-out clause for the
EU migration pact,
and we didn't have to vote into it, and it seemed to be the sentiment across the country that people didn't want it. All the independents vote against it, and then if you hear it, there was a number of basically interviews like Eddie Hobbs and others to say that, and then there was a lot of the politicians that the independents said, well, because of the whip system that was pushed through.
It was pushed through, yeah.
Like,
so
what do you think of that, the whip system, the way that even though a lot of the constituents didn't want it, and maybe even some of these people in Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael or Sinn Féin didn't agree with it, then just go vote with the party. They're not voting with the constituents because of the whip system.
Well, it's very, when you think about it, it's actually very anti-democratic. And it's not allowing the constituents to voice their opinion back up through the TD, and for that is filtered up into the Dáil. So what you have is you have this system here. What happened in that particular case was you had the majority of the seats in the government are held by the parties that are on one side, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party. So if they collectively all vote together in one direction, then with all the independents and the other parties, they still have a majority. And that's how they get to push through these motions through the Dáil against the wishes of the people. So
if the whip system, basically, with this whip system, if you don't vote with it, you're kicked out of the party. So so are you saying that this should be abolished or illegal for somebody to be kicked out of the party if you vote with your constituents? Is that what you're saying?
I think the whip system is anti-democratic and it should be taken out of the Dáil. That little mechanism needs to be taken out to give true democracy and give TDs an honest voice. If they want to vote in that way, but at least they don't have the fear of a threat from the party that they're going to be ejected.
I would say that if you're going to go through with that, and I agree with you, you wouldn't want kind of a workaround that say, oh, the whip system is not there, but still if you vote against the party, you still use your job. There has to be, I think it nearly has to be illegal to kick somebody out if you go against and vote for your constituents. You to vote, because that's where the legislation gets in, it's the vote. Whatever about the disagreeing with somebody's policy or they want you to actually have the party line. But it's when these legislation comes in and the people are not represented. And I think that if you could get that in, that's a very interesting, and it's kind of the specifics of that was done.
As I said in the beginning of the conversation, what I kind of surmise this in is power to the people. By doing this, it gives in one thing. It just look. I suppose it's. I love to do a lot of things, but if I didn't do anything, if I was elected, and over the term, if I didn't do anything, only got that back into the Constitution.
Article 48. And
I got that back,
but if you got the whip system as well, I tell you, it would mean that the power is completely with the people.
Absolutely, 100%.
Complete, and then we don't have then we don't have all of these basically, but people are absolutely frustrated. These policies are coming.
I watched a video last night of a woman down in Dundrum in Tipperary, and it broke my heart watching her. She was crying, and she was protesting outside this place where they pushed in an iPass centre. Now we don't have this. We don't have so much of it in Meath, but at the same time, it's one country, and she was crying that she had to leave her family and protest outside this hotel to stop these people coming in and to stop the government from pushing stuff in on the people that's against their wishes. And that to me now is it's a disgrace.
I'm not a politician. I'm not anything near it, right? But for me, it's like Ireland fought for their sovereignty for years against the British, and then we just hand over that through a thing just like that to EU that our borders is deciding of who we bring into the country by the EU.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Do you understand that?
Well, take for example Sweden. Sweden, I remember I had friends in Sweden going up there maybe about 12 years ago, up to Stockholm and Eskilstuna and some different towns like that. Beautiful place, very calm. I spoke to them recently, and they said it's a different place altogether now because of the open border policy that they have had for quite some time now, that there's so many just bad elements around the place that it's not safe to go out of your house at night time, particularly at night time. And that's what's creeping into Ireland as well. You've seen a big incident there recently in Ballahadreen, where there was a young lad was abused, and this is destroying these type of communities. And it's only a matter of time before it comes into our local communities.
Where do you think this influence is coming from? Some say it's the NGOs, right? And we've like 30,000 NGOs. What's your own views of the?
I think the NGOs have a very significant part to play in Ireland in politics. But I think that it's really turned into a lot of these things are quangos now, where they've been brought in for a certain purpose. That purpose is served, but then the NGO is still there and exists, so reinvent something else. And that's, I think, part to do with a lot of these things that are being pushed in.
What do you think of 30,000 NGOs in the size of Ireland?
Well, that's not absolutely nonsensical. So I think one of the things that would need to be done is for that to be analysed and investigated. And also the funding of the NCOs. Where's that coming from? And that needs to be fully investigated.
Well, we put 6.5 billion, but it's not the only way. Where's the other source of?
And you see, look, it's one thing saying this, but if I was elected into government, these things are what I would do through my website and the information I put out to the constituents. I would be completely transparent about the work that I'm doing on, say, something like that, how we would start an investigation, or we'd get a motion on things going, that this would actually turn into an action.
Do you think all the NGOs should be auditors?
I think, well, the whole thing needs to be re-examined, because it's just bleeding money, and what value are we getting for it?
Yeah.
So the Irish people need to get value for money, and we're getting no value for money with the current government. As I said to you, there's no point in me getting into stuff that everybody knows about already, such as the Children's Hospital and things like that. But like, the country is bleeding money from the top down. The people that need the money, like say nurses that are working so hard, and these firemen, guards are kind of being forgot about, and they're being asked to go out to these frontline situations that the government are creating with the immigration policy, and then their wages are being
we have a housing crisis, and yet we're bringing in a whole load of people. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
No. Now I know some of the other parties have come out with proposals to build hundreds and thousands of houses. At the peak of the Celtic Tiger, we were building 90,000 houses. At the moment, it's somewhere around 30. So realistically, go from 30,000 houses up to 90,000 houses is just physically not possible. Not over a short period of time, anyway. But as the question you asked me there about the housing crisis versus the migration, well, it's nonsensical. First of all, we need to address the housing crisis, or we need a long-term strategic plan for that. Okay. Also, what needs to be encompassed into that is the homeless problem in Ireland. Now, in countries like Finland, different places like this, they have implemented very, very good policies to help the homelessness in their countries, where in some cases they've nearly solved it. Okay, so what I'd be proposing to do was not to reinvent the wheel. It's to look at other countries that have successful systems to deal with these problems, and mimic them or copy them or adjust them to our own situation, and then move forward from there with a strategic plan. Now, any of these policies I'm talking about doing, on my website or through my social media, I would demonstrate exactly how these things would be done through phases and through sections. So it's doable. Anything is doable if you break it into small chunks.
Let's get on to, like, there are a lot about national issues, right? What do you think? You some really good idea about the local issue, and I completely agree with it.
Yeah.
I think the constituents need to hear that.
Yeah, okay. So other plan or proposal for me is what I would call is a rural hub development scheme. So I am from Boardsmill, which is in the south of Meath. I live in Killeen now, which is just kind of down the road, small areas. Where this came apparent to me, first of all, was a couple of years ago when I was juvenile coach for Boardsmill. And I saw our team talking out, and we had maybe 5, 6, 7 guys turning up for a game against a Toth, who comes in with 20, 30 kids to play with. And you're having to get some of the girls in, you're having to put things together so everybody can have a game and enjoy themselves, and then they're swapping around. But anyway, I thought about this, and then I looked around the community, and I could see where, it's slowly being eroded. The actual communities are being eroded, in that the population can't thrive because the housing situation primarily is not there, and it's difficult and very expensive.
But if they are building houses, it's all around the towns.
It's all around the towns, yeah.
And do you think that...
So what I would propose to do is rural hub community development, and this would be small housing schemes within these communities, fully serviced and integrated into the communities, done through proper planning and consultation with the county council, and the environment impact studies would all be done as well, and that the people building these small developments, obviously, well, it might be obvious, but would all be local contractors, people that people could trust to do a good job.
So I'd agree with you. It's like if you put people into the town, and then actually you're putting all of these basically iPass centres all around the country. You're basically changing the culture. We are like hurling, football, community games. You have music. We have our schools. So even Boardsmill School, a lot of are coming in from Trim, and then they're not playing hurling in the local area. So our basically GA and all that, and even the church, is all important to us. We're a Catholic country. We should celebrate our traditions, our religion, everything about us should be all Irishness and our Irish language. And this is something that.
I think with these policies with the government, particularly over the last 10 years, a lot of our culture is being very slowly eroded on the issues that you've just spoke about. The priorities are not given to proper cultural things.
The cultural things of Irish. We should basically celebrate the Irishness of who we are and actually celebrate that.
But also, I'd like to say, just to develop that in the kids as they're growing up through their education system. Do you know what I mean? As you mentioned there, and something that's very dear to me is the arts and the music. That's fostered in kids as they grow up. Do you know what I mean? And to steer them away from these, from the problem that's coming, or that's there already, which is video games and kids being stuck in rooms.
We did talk about before that it needs to be based on evidence, and do you see the decisions a lot of the time are just being made based on they're being made. So do you think that like looking at the census data and see actual statistics, because you'll be able to with the census data see are we degrading, and you'll be able to see exactly what the population would be of all these communities.
So one of the things that I was thinking about doing, but I think going forward, regardless of whether I get elected, hopefully I do, but if people vote for me, what we would do straight away is we would initiate a specific science-based study on the impact of the lack of rural development. And also to coincide with that, what I would do is initiate a study on the impact of this inward migration policy by the government. So what that would do is, depending on, I suppose, look, to be frank with you, depending on whether I was elected or not, it depends on the resources I would have. If I have the resources, it can be done quite quickly, maybe within a year and a half. What that would do is it would mean that I would be able to come back to you with actual scientific facts.
Of how many houses you would need, because if you were to say, look at the current population, what is the population, say, of Boardsmill, or we'll say Liver, or what it has been over the last, say, 30 years, what's the actual, the average age? You'll have all that from the census data.
Everything.
And then see if you continue in that trajectory.
Also, you'd have everything, birth rates, health issues, all that.
All of those things into it. And I think also as well that it would be because I'm a scientist myself. It's like that they actually needs to be based on evidence, and I don't think the county councils or the government make these decisions with enough evidence. What's the impacts of these things? We're talking because it's dear to us. We grew up in Borsmill, and then I just want to finish the point. It's like, well, I would also actually look at the qualitative study. How do people actually feel about that? What they grew up with, what's important to them. There's one thing about statistics, but we need to look at how important are these things to people. It's very dear to us. But people, that needs to be evidence,
Yeah, so if I was elected and we got to get that study done, say within the next year and a half, then I could come back and I could say to the county council, and I could also speak directly to them, to the constituents immediately through my social media platforms, and in clinics as well. Is in order to sustain our rural communities, these are the specific things that we need to do at a minimum to sustain it over the long haul, And I think that's information that's critical information, because at the moment nobody really knows where things are going. But with a study like that, you have actual scientific evidence.
So for your constituents, what does it mean? Like you say in Boardsmill, you could have like a site with maybe 30 houses around the school, another one. You wouldn't be creating many towns or many villages, but it'd still be service sites, and then you have another one, and there'd be once-off developments. They wouldn't be all just packed house estates, but to be done that it would be lower the environmental impact. You'd have another 20 and say over by the pitch, and you would scatter it, that you're still sustaining the community within that clustered kind of nucleated development. And then on top of that, then I see my brother will say he did a lot over in Kildare in the club that he was in, where they did all-weather pitch.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff there.
Yeah.
I think that they're supporting all of these facilities to continue with our GA.
You see, it's not the Fianna Gael and Fianna Fáil solution to this is just throw money at it. That's not the solution for all these problems. You know what I mean? You need to be an integral part of these communities, which I am. And I've always been, I was born there, and I've been part of the clubs, and all the different clubs, not just the GEA, but the martial arts clubs, the bowls clubs, the golf clubs.
Yeah, you need to understand.
I'm actively part of all of those.
But one of the things that before it was tried in Borsmill, but at the time it was hard to get the. Do you think farming land, that because of what's happening now with the farming, that there would be more likely you'll be able to get the farmers to give a certain number of sites?
You see, all these things start initially with the land deals. And that's a very delicate procedure, an extremely delicate procedure. I have a great deal of experience in that from working in Ireland and different parts of the world as well. So that's the very first thing.
But I think I would say that the timing is right from that, because there's not as much. The farmers are actually being really cut down in terms of what they can earn. There's not as much going in of young we'll say men are not going into or women are not going into farming as much. So, and if you had a tax incentive for those farmers to give this land to the community.
You see, I spoke to some of the constituency when I was campaigning about this issue, and I spoke to some farmers. And what I would do going forward, if elected, is I would bring these people that are involved with the agriculture, the farmers and stuff like that, and I'd open up this conversation publicly through the social media platforms, so people can be fully aware of what's actually going on and how hard stuff is for farmers and different aspects of agriculture because of regulations that's coming in from the European Union. But one of the things of the way I am and the way I see myself going forward as a TD is opening up the office in transparency through social media and through my platforms and website and the clinics, in person and online. So what I mean by that is, if you have a constituent or a person that needs the help at the office, they can either get rapidly in touch with us by ringing me directly on the phone. We can have a Zoom call, or in some cases, depending on if there's a mobility issue or whatever it is, I'll call out to them directly. There's some people down the road with me, and they're quite elderly. Sometimes they need help for different issues, and people like that need a house call. And that's something that there's important things to do and you prioritise things, but that's something that I would very much so see myself do as a TD.
Do you mind to go back to this again? Because if you look at it, there seems to be so many of these things that if you didn't have protests against for the communities, we'd have loads of these basically immigrant centres around the country. And yet, do you think that this building these clustered community hubs, right, is really important? Right, one of the things that people say that the once-off houses for people who want to have it still wouldn't be stopped to single houses. That needs to remain the same.
Yeah.
But then if these kind of cluster development for people either who want to come back and live out the community, or people who don't say have access to farm and land, or whatever, or get a site, but yet. If it was actually this, do you think there's an awful lot more priority to EU agendas than there is to what the constituencies want from the parties, the main parties?
Yeah, it seems that the policies from the main government over the last number of years has been moving away from that. But what I'm talking about with the Community Hub Development Programme, that would work in parallel with what's already existing with the single house plan. So if you wanted to build a house, land or whatever it is, that works in parallel with this project as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so you're not just stopping single house development, one-off housing. That's going to continue as it is. And that, for the most part, is a pretty good system. You know what I mean?
And I want to go back to the impact. So if you did the impact in terms of the census, looking at what if we didn't sustain the development, and then if you're saying to do another study on the impact, I don't think that has been done anywhere in the world.
No.
That would be evidence-based. This what I find is like, as somebody who's trained in science, it's like, a lot of decisions are made by the government are not based on evidence.
Yeah, so some of these policies that they're pushing through now, these transgender ideology and stuff like that, none of this is science-based. It's been pushed through with an agenda. It seems to be coming from NGOs and this direction. And also this new curriculum that's being taught to children,
SPHE, Social Personal Health Education.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm only getting used to it. But again, this is being pushed through without the proper consultation of the parents across the country, and it's not science-based. Do you know what I mean?
But you would look at that, you want to look at that again.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would intend to bring a magnifying glass in across that. And bring the parents in on board.
One of the things you talk about, right, is in terms of this transparency. You've set up your website. You're starting this podcast, and is that kind of the thing? This seems to be quite unusual for any politician to do. Is this something you're going to continue throughout your own?
Well, what I'd say to people is, imagine for a moment. Okay, I have the website. That's the same. That's the central hub of your contact and everything like that. But then I would do regular podcasts with people that are involved in politics, the constituents, stuff like that, and that opens up the whole office to a different level of transparency, never seen before.
That's actually
so
quite. That
Yeah.
in itself is quite a different. That's your particular USP, unique selling point, and I think. That'd be quite a different perspective.
Yeah, I think, look, if people are not going to elect me, I think that, the other candidates might listen to this podcast and take some ideas from it and use them going forward and give the people the proper service that they deserve from a TD.
I think, Damien, with the points there you have, there's a lot of really good stuff, and I'd say that, this is the kick-off to it. I wish you very much the best in the campaign.
Thanks
you
very
have
much.
This support from me and all your colleagues and friends around you.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it, and I'm looking forward to bringing my ideas forward. And, I hope that I get a reach out across the constituency and everybody gets my message. If I don't get elected, I'll be satisfied if my message gets across to people and they know who I am, what I'm about, and what I want to bring to the office. So even if they don't vote for me, they vote for somebody else. That now at least they can expect something better from the office that's been before. Do you know what I mean? Because of the ideas that I'm coming forward with.
Well, listen, the best of luck in your campaign.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you.